Welcome to today's Office Hours. I'm super glad that you're all here today, and what we're going to be covering today is two important topics. One is going to be user management, and the second will be our group management. And joining me, as always, is my real-life Carmen Sandiego counterpart, Miss Veronica Boudreau. So that being said, where in the world was Veronica Boudreau?
Thanks. Hi, Adam. I actually just came back from some international travel. It was wonderful, but trying to do it over an extended weekend can really mess up your sleep cycle. I mean,
Yeah.
was it worth it? Oh my goodness, absolutely. But now that I've had a couple of days to recover, I'm feeling better, and I'm excited for today's session.
Well, good. I'm glad that you're here. As always, Veronica helps me in the back end with making sure that people's questions are answered, and she helps me with some of the content and the some of the questions and any follow-ups we might have. So I really appreciate all the assistance you give me. I know you're not necessarily a voice in during these sessions, but Veronica's assistance in this is always crucial, to be honest and fair. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So in today's session, I want to spotlight an important part of our user management that can sometimes be overlooked, and that's reviewing your current login users and making sure access still reflects your team's needs. Now, I know it's a simple step, but it can make a big difference in keeping your environment organized, secured, and easy to manage. We'll also be taking a look at our group management module that's recently been released, where you can create groups, assign rights to those groups, and then apply them to the different individuals. Let's make this setup, the idea is to make the setup faster, easier, and more streamlined, while also, it's helping create a little bit more consistency across your user access, across your different users. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Now, as always, before I jump in, there's always going to be time for Q&A following this presentation. So if you have those questions, whether it's regarding today's topic or you have something new, I always encourage that if you have a question that isn't related to what I'm talking about, bring it. This is an opportunity for you to talk to me about anything in our product. The chat section, I don't like to have both chat and Q&A open, because then it's like, where do you put your questions? I disabled chat. Q&A is open for anybody to put their question in, and that's what Veronica would be monitoring during today's call. She might jump in and tell me, hey, Adam, there was a great question that just came through. Do you have time to answer that? And sure. And then lastly, once the presentation's over, I'll give the opportunity for people to unmute themselves. I just ask that, typically it's easier if you raise your hand and then I can answer in the order they might have been asked or whatever. So, and I do keep the recording going during those sessions, but I don't keep it for the recorded session. I just use it for reference to be like, oh, who asked what, and do I need to follow up? So yeah, as always, I like to thank everybody who's here and who is attending, especially if you're a repeat attender. I also appreciate you ever so much. And let's dive right into the content. So first, I'm going to go ahead and just get into our analytics product. I've logged into one of our demo systems here. You're welcome to follow along in your own system or just watch here, whatever you're doing, whether you're watching this from a recording standpoint or live today. And where you're going to go to start is our user module. Now you'll navigate to the user module here on the left-hand side. If you want to see it a little bit more broken out, you can use the hamburger icon here in the top, but users is where we're going under the administration section. Now, if you don't see users, there's a good chance that you are not in our product as an administrator. You may only be a user, and that makes sense. Users wouldn't have access to create other users, only the admins. So if you need access, you feel that that's something you should have, reach out to one of your administrators. If for whatever reason your administrator no longer with the company and you need your access rights elevated, you can put a support ticket in and we can change your access. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and click on users, and you're going to see in our demo system just some test users and stuff like that we've created for this demo system to give you an idea of like what a system might look like. Now you'll see here, there are some that are going to have tags that say legacy. Most of the systems that you are logging into your systems are very rarely going to have legacy left. This was kind of during our process to kind of migrate some of our users from an older login process to new. All of your users going forward from that process are already been converted, so they wouldn't say legacy, they'll say active or disabled. So this is where you're going to review your active users. You'll have your list, obviously the clear indicators of their name and their email and what kind of type they are. You'll see a new category of groups here and what groups have been applied to them, their current status, when they've last logged in, and you've got features to edit them or additional options. Okay. So it's a great place to start to review your users. Okay. Now, one of the things I want to show you to start out with is that you don't necessarily have to remove them. Like you can see here, I have a test user that I created of myself, and I've disabled this user. That user is not gone. You can always re-enable that person, but right now that person cannot log into the system. And it's as easy as clicking on the three dots and enabling or disabling a user. Okay. Obviously, you have the reset password. So if a user's forgotten their password, that's a good start. If you know you're going through this list and realize that some of your users who should be getting in the product haven't, and they're like, oh, I don't know my password, you can reset their password, and it will send them a automated email to the email address that's listed here. And then delete. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what it's like. Like I said, I have this test user here that I logged in back in September. We're going to go ahead and delete this user. And what it's going to do, it's going to ask you, do you want to delete this person? Obviously, the action can't be undone, but largely, it also includes some information that might be relevant in the sense of, do they have any report templates in either the new analytics application or our classic engine? Okay. Also, if you have any scheduled reports in our new analytics or the classic engine. Okay. That being said, if you delete them, then those report templates that are on a schedule will stop. They'll be gone. They'll be deleted. So is this something you might want to review on that user before you delete it? Okay. And so it gives you that option. It tells you that's what's going to happen. Okay, so it does tell you reassign those to a different user if you need to keep them. Otherwise, you just type in the delete, and it'll give you the option to delete that user. Okay. Now, that's the simple part of user access. I think in most security standards, they say to review your user list quarterly. So every 3 months, go through, update your users that have access. They say for admins, you should do it even sooner, but it's really up to you and your organization how often you want to come in here and clean up your users. Okay. Something to keep in mind, though, one of the best ways to handle access removal more consistently, rather than coming in here and doing it manually, is to enable SSO. If your Infratel system is not currently set up for SSO, though, and you want to explore that option, just reach out to Veronica or me, and we can get you connected with a sales rep for more information. Okay. Very simple. Users and user access was not going to take us very long because it's a very simple thing, but it's springtime. So it's time to do a cleanup, right? If you haven't done one in a while, do it now. It's a great time to do it. But while you're doing it, you can then start thinking about groups. And this is where the new group management module comes in handy. So the new tab of groups is here. And just as another reminder, if you don't have, if you're not an admin, you would not have access to users, which then you're not going to have access to groups. And that makes sense because only admins really should have those capabilities. And you're going to see under the groups that you have, I've made 3 generic groups and define them however I wanted to define them. You and your admins can create groups based on your own specifications. Okay. It'll also tell you how many users have been applied to that group. You can modify the group and you can delete it. Okay. Although you see here, these groups cannot be deleted while there's users in them. So you have to remove their access to their groups before you can delete it. Let's go ahead and select a new group to set this up. So we're going to call this Adam's test group, or whatever name best represents the group that you're creating, so that it's easy just looking at it what it entails. Okay. Then from here, you're going to be able to set the access that you want these people that have this group up, so that when you're creating new users and you set it to the group access, all of this is already done for you. So it's a lot faster of a process. And so you may not have all three of these options because this is standard data. So if you are a queues only product where you're only seeing queue data, you will not see standard data as an option. But if you're a non-queues customer, then you wouldn't see queue. Then you would only see standard, and you wouldn't see any of these other queue access. If you happen to have both, then you would see both, or all three if you even have contact center. So standard data is standard call records, no queue specific information. And from here, you can say, I want the people assigned to this group to have either all of the standard data access. You can do that. You can say none. I don't want them to have any access to our standard data. So if you're a combination of queues and standard, but you want to make a subset of users only see queue data and not standard data, then you can set this as like your non-queue or queues only group, right? If you set specific data, this is where you get to be a little bit more nitty gritty about it. And you'll see here that a standard data access tab shows up here at the top. You come here, and this is where you can kind of define a little more granular the information you want them to see. Now, since we're talking about standard data, standard call records for like, UCM, WebEx, Teams, Avaya, whatever, you can break it down by a couple different ways. Organizational access is going to utilize our directory. So for doing a directory import, or you have one in place, then you can utilize this to say, I want this group to only have access to the first frugal financial group within my directory. Because if we kind of caret this and go down further, you can see that there's like all the different departments and sub-departments, and then you get, this is like, I think the end level department, you can say private bankers, right? And that's all they would have, this group would have access to. Or you can say the whole, the higher level and have anything beneath it have access, okay? You can go as granular as a person, so it will reload the directory and then show you even to a person level. So if we go to first frugal, go in private bankers, I guess it depends on the department. Actually, let me undo that. Huh? There we go. Specific organizations. We can go in, and then you have the individual people, depending if they're labeled or not. The reason it took so long and it dawned on me is that if your directory is rather large, the UI is trying to load all of these specific individuals. So if it's a large directory, you might want to search for the individual rather than expanding out to pull up that information. Okay, so you can specify specific organization structures, and it will apply it. And I should have. There you go. Okay. Data source access. This is if you have different data sources. And when I say data sources, there's a lot of different scenarios that this could apply to. For example, if you have a Microsoft Teams environment, but you still have a leftover UCM environment that you're still dealing with, you can specify that this group should have access to this cluster and this environment, or I'm sorry, WebEx calling and UCM, or you're going from UCM to Teams or whatnot. Whatever the different phone systems that you have set up and they're considered data sources, you can configure. If you only have one, typically then it would just be all data sources, because there's no point in specifying all data sources should cover anything you have. And then lastly, report menu access. This module only exists currently in our classic report engine. And what this is that you have the ability to create a menu within the reports that have a list of reports that users would see when they log in and look at that particular module. So a lot of times, because of our classic reporting engine had so many reports to choose from, we didn't want to overwhelm them. You create a menu with a subset of reports and that's all they could see. It simplifies their experience and makes your life easier, not having to explain every single report. So you can make report menus in Classic and you can assign them, and that would be good within a group so that you can say this group should only have, whatever group you're designing, this set of reports that you've designed. Okay. Once you have selected what you want, you could push save, but since we have not configured all of, say, the different configurations for this group, you might want to come back here and specify. Okay, so queue access, you can say, oh, I want them to have specific queues. This environment doesn't have queues set up, so I can't select the different queues, but you would be able to say, oh, this list of queues is what I would like this group to have access to. And then the same applies to the UCCX environment. This environment does have UCCX, so we can configure those and say that's what we want. Okay. Once you've set up this group, you would then save. You'll see here that my test group has been applied. It has no current users. It does have the ability to be deleted because it doesn't have any users assigned, and you're good to go. If you need to make some changes, you can always push the pencil. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Now that we've created this group though, let's go back to users. Let's set up a new user. And from here, we'll call it Jane Doe. jdoe@nope.com. When it comes to user type, it would has to be a user, because if you give admin, they're just gonna have full rights to everything, so they don't need groups. Admins wouldn't ever use a group, it would just be full access to everything. But users have that option. And so from here, you'll see the groups drop down appears. And from groups, you can select it. So if they don't need a group, just leave it none. But if you want to apply any of the groups that we just created, say like Adam's test group, you'll see that it shows up, okay? But what you'll notice here is that you still do have to make some selections. It doesn't just auto select the group settings, because you might set up the group settings, but you might want to make some custom changes to this user. And so from here, you're going to say, all right, sure, they might have specific data access, or I want to inherit from the group, but you have to give it a role. So you can say, I want them to have standard access, elevated, or full access to the system. And then you say, when it comes to the groups, within the standard access or elevated access, what data do they have access to? Okay. So if we give elevated, inherit from group, there you go. Contact center, again, you're going to apply a role. Do you want them to have access, manager, or user, or reports? If you give user, again, you either specify or you say inherit it from the group. And then lastly, that's contact center. And then this one is for queues. Again, you say what access you want them to have, agent, manager, full access, or no access. And then you can say, I want to inherit from the group. So it'd be simple as making the person, give them their roles, inherit from the group, and then save. You don't have to sit there and specify every queue, because if you might have lots of queues, that would be a lot of clicking for an individual user. And if you have to add 10 users, that's a lot. So each user, you can come in here, apply the name and email, apply the group, inherit from the group, give them their access, and save. Once they're saved, they're done, and you move on to the next one. Okay. Now that we've had, you create that new user with that group access, and they log in and they're using the system, go back to users, and you need to make changes to that group access. Let's say that group is going to change, or you realize you've given them too much access or not enough access. You can go back into the groups, make modifications to those groups, and it will reflect to the list of users that have that access. So it's retroactive. It will basically, any changes you make to the group will change to the users. So you don't have to go in there and reset anything back up. You just make changes to the groups. Now, something I want to share that I think is important that I don't think everybody knows. Users do not, and I'm going to repeat this, they do not count towards your licensing. So you can have as many or as few as you'd like with zero impact to your system. And like I said, since we're coming up to springtime, it's time to maybe take a moment to clean up your users or create some groups and assign them to your users and add anybody into the system that could benefit from the use of this application, whether it's for the dashboards, whether it's for reporting, the power you can give them to be able to, come in here, run reports on the data that they need whenever they need to, It might even free up some time or some responsibility for you to have to, every time somebody needs a report, that you have to come in here and, run that report for them. You can give them that power to do so. Okay. And I think that, I hope this demo kind of give you some insights into our groups and also kind of a reminder of, user management, the responsibility of keeping up with your users, making sure that they have the right access, if they should even have access, are these users even here anymore, that kind of stuff. I hope this helped you kind of get an idea of like how to create users now with ease by using groups and to keep your users cleaned up.